Shalom, welcome to our daily class and Rebbe Nachman on Patreon. We're holding in Torah Lamed Hey. We've been discussing the nature of teshuvah as returning a thing to its source, the place it came from. Well, teshuvah is bringing the thing back, just like a lost item or a lost piece of ourselves. And that's essentially what we're trying to do with teshuvah, is to return lost pieces of ourselves to the Creator. And guess what? It makes us new. We start again. It's an amazing thing. Today we're going to talk about the wisdom and the nature of holy and unholy wisdom and why they don't mix so well. Okay, Adam, in the middle of the first paragraph, Adam machnis betoch sichlo hakadosh machshavot chitzoniot. When a person puts external thoughts into his holy mind, these external wisdoms, he calls them, which yesterday we made a distinction between soft wisdoms like philosophy and theology that's not Torah-based versus hard sciences like math and, astronomy, geology, geography, etc. Nonetheless, these external wisdoms, what do they do? They make his holy intelligence smaller. So think of it like you have this intelligence in your mind and it has room for holy or for unholy. But when you put unholy in a holy mind, you make the mind smaller. And depending on how much space, how much RAM that external wisdom takes up in his brain, so too will be the reduction in the space of his holy intellect. So now here we see the thing where the Rebbe says that the unholy intelligence is like a tube that reaches inside the holy intelligence. It's like one of those hummingbirds sticks its beak into the heart of the flower to take out the nectar. But if the nectar is the holy intellect, then the hummingbee is coming along, a hummingbird, maybe there's a hummingbee too. Bees don't hum, they bumble. Okay, well, anyways, so the hummingbird takes out the nectar. So too the external wisdom goes into the holy wisdom and takes out part of the power, part of the life force, part of the holiness. And it makes the space of the holy intellect smaller. And through this reed, this channel of the unholy wisdom, and the problem that's really bad is not to go out and learning other intellects and other ideas and disciplines. It's the negative traits that are attached to those. In other words, if I learn some philosophy that makes me hate somebody, then that philosophy is not a good philosophy to learn, because it contains within it the hatred of the authors. And so too with all negative traits. Shlomo et bat Paro, and this is the idea. When King Solomon married the daughter of Pharaoh, he should have known. I can't judge the man, right? He knew a little bit of more than I did. But, he had usually King Solomon was marrying women for political alliances, and I'm sure it was the same with the daughter of Pharaoh, but nonetheless, when he did so, the rabbi said, Yarad Gavriel, the Malach Gavriel, the angel of Gevurah, of power, of might, of war, of bloodshed, came down Na'at Kaneh B'yam. He came down and he planted a reed in the sea. And that reed in the sea, the Talmud says, became the Ir Gadol Sharomi. it became Rome. I know Shegam Lamala, and so too in the upper worlds, Mishtashalut Gevurot, in the chaining down of these power forces, which is Yarad Gavriel, which is the idea of Gavriel coming down. Nase mus susfita da hava. It made a little seahorse of gold. What does that mean? I don't bechinat klipa or klipot. What happens is that there are pure thoughts, pure ideas, pure feelings in heaven. When they come down in the physical world, they get exaggerated by human vessels. Because we are naturally subjective, we cannot help it. That whatever we learn or think or feel is going to produce a shell, a feeling, an energy field of ourselves that's going to stick to that pure wisdom or pure understanding or truth or love or any of the traits of the tree. They get covered a little bit by our personalities. And here we're talking on a massive scale of King Solomon, the wisest of all men, that when he married this Bat Paro, it wasn't an unclean event per se, because for sure this woman converted. And it wasn't like he was just going out for a run with the princess. But the power that he invested was taken by a negative force, and then it came down in the form of the angel, and he planted that reed that became Rome, which became Edom, which became the Roman Empire, which became the destroyers of the Second Temple. So you see things kind of spun out of control. So you see you have the holy intelligence, and then you have the unholy. And it's not that the unholy sets out to do evil. It's not like we're not talking about like the wisdom of how to kill. We're talking about all kinds of wisdoms. And love and all the other traits, as we said. So, it's these mixing of the forces is where the problems begin. Now, if Shlomo HaMelech had known, maybe he would have turned back around and gone back to Egypt and given Pharaoh his daughter back. I don't know. But what Rome became was the major empire of the world at the time. And they were tyrants, and they killed a lot of people. But not only that, they became the birthplace of a religion that became another tormentor of the Jewish people. Okay. And this is reflected in the verse, Kishanasa Shlomo et bat Paro Yarad Gavriel na'etz kaneh b'yam. Right? That's in Masechet Sanhedrin 21b. If you want to look it up, it's worth it. Because there'll be a lot of other things the rabbis will weigh in on such a teaching. As we said above, this angel came down and created this klipa called the golden horse, horse, if you will, which is these external wisdoms, and nikra gam kein kaneh, which is they are also called on the idea of the channel or the tube or the reed, and it was rooted in the sea of wisdom. And it made the place of the holiness smaller. So another way of thinking about this to understand how it works is this external wisdom. What is the wisdom? Wisdom is the power of uniting ideas to create further greater ideas and theorize and create solutions, create unity between opposites, etc., etc. Water and fire are opposite, right? But one day a man figured out if I heated up the water enough, it would turn, the fire would turn the water into vapor or mist. And I like that mist. I put a little eucalyptus in there. It's very nice to breathe. Or you take that mist and you turn it up long enough and you can boil a cup of coffee. And then if you turn the mist up high enough with the right machinery around it, you have a steam engine. And then you can make river boats. And you can make all kinds of interesting things, etc., etc., etc. So you see just the way that wisdom of unifying things created a lot of different, some good things in the world. I imagine a riverboat is a pleasant way to go down the Mississippi. But, when it comes to using wisdom to make nuclear weapons on how to destroy people, we got to wonder about that a little bit longer. Now, let's put it this way. If I start talking about nuclear weapons and Hirohito and the generals of Japan, we're going to get way off base. But basically, I believe that the use of nuclear weapons is something that humanity doesn't have the right to do. We don't have a right to that kind of power. But we have a king, and God allows man to do what man wants to do. That's part of the punishment of, of the other side, is that human beings are not responsible when it comes to things like this. It's too much power in one place, as we say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think we're seeing some of that today. But nonetheless, this external wisdom, it goes into the holy wisdom. The holy wisdom is how to create bring the light of God into the world, to see the interconnections of things. And when you see how the structures of the universe are interconnected and repeated over and over, like the rivers on a continent look just like the rivers in a leaf under a microscope. And if you look at your hand, you say there's also river networks in your body, in your nerves, in your blood. And so this structure is being repeated over and over and over, all the way back to the tree of life. That's holy wisdom, to see the interconnectedness of form and structure and energy. When that power and that insight is taken outside and used for other things, things happen that aren't good. So that's what the Rebbe is talking about here, is this channel of external wisdom is taking off the holiness, and it makes the mind, the holy intelligence, smaller. Va'ala alav sirton ha'inu bechinat midot megunot, right? That evil traits are aroused with this. Va'ala nivne karach gadol sharomi. And upon all this, this one little reed became the city of Rome. Ha'inu nachash, which is, the idea of the reed is connected to the idea of the snake kadmoni, the primordial snake. Akaruch achar kedusha, which is wrapped around the holiness, just like a snake wraps around a staff. Va'al shem zeh, or a tree. Va'al shem zeh nikra karach gadol, and this is why Rome is called the great city, because it's a symbol of the relationship or the interweaving of the holy and the unholy. Now you could say, Avraham, the whole world is the interweaving of holy and unholy, of good and evil. And it's right, it is. Absolutely. And that's exactly why we want to keep the Torah and become holy and get close to Hashem, because we want to remove the unholy and be who we really were before, the door slammed in heaven. And we want to expand the space of holiness in our mind, not contract it. And that's why the snake is called, is this whole image of the snake wrapping around a tree. Ki yigdil lasot im ele, God did greatness with us, which our sages teach, Darshu Shal Sha'ayetzer Hara Mitkareh Yisrael, that the evil snake is jealous of the Jewish people more than all the others. Ukigedulim, and in its growth, Como Cain, but Talmid HaChachamim Yoter Mikulam, and then the snake is also after the greatest ones of the Jews, the ones who have Torah knowledge, truly possess it. And this is why this ancient primordial power called the snake, the evil inclination, is Karach Gadol, is called this great city. It's Karach around. It's because Krach in Aramaic is city, but Lekroach, it means to wrap around something. Shukrach Tamid Achar Gedolei Ador, and the great ones of the generation that get it even more. This war with the snake. V'yoter mishar anashim, more than most people. Shehu bonei binyanim shel sechel achitzoni. And this was what happens. What the snake does is he takes and he makes these external houses. Now we're not talking about buildings per se. We're talking about structures that feed off of the holy, and create this screen, this smoke screen, this illusion that God is not here, that God is not behind all of science and all of nature. But man is wedged right in the middle with our free choice to do what we want to do. And you see how important free choice is, because it makes us human, but also gives us the potential to become divine, or the potential, God forbid, to be quite the opposite. Now, however, afterwards, when a person guards himself from external powers, lo zo afzo, not this one, not that one, he still needs to renew his mind. At all times, we need to be renewing our mind with new ideas, because that's the nature of the mind. That's the nature of the intellect itself, is it wants knowledge. It lives on knowledge. And knowledge gives us power. And this is what it means. In God's goodness, He renews every day, always, the workings of creation, the workings of how infinite light becomes finite power in man. Bereshit, in the beginning of the new renewal in Bereshit, hu chidush ha-chokhmah, which is the renewal of our wisdom, the seeing the interconnections. Katuv, kulam b'chokhmah sita, all of them are made holy. Ki ha-chidush ha-seichel hu chidush ha-neshama. Because when we get new ideas and it renews our mind, the neshama is getting renewed too. They're not separate. They're each giving to the other. Ideas feed the mind feeds the soul. The soul actually ultimately feeds the upper soul, which ends up hopefully feeding the entire world with new ideas. Ki ha-seichel hu ha-neshama, the intellect is this soul, as it is written, Nishmat Shaddai Tavineim, that they will understand the soul of God. Can you imagine? You understand the soul of God? God says, you can't understand my thoughts. But when God says, Lo machshavotai machshavotchem, that my thoughts are not your thoughts, I don't think that you can understand me. He's talking about there and how He runs the world. But here, Nishmat Shaddai Tavineim means that you can understand the soul of God, how He does things, in the sense of He creates, He expands, He contracts, He limits, He cuts, He mixes. These are powers that all of us do, especially if you're a chemist, right? As it is written by our sages, Ma Akadosh Baruch Hu Zan et haolam, just like Hashem gives life force to the world, Av haneshama zana et gufa, so too the soul gives power to each body. We have a divine power pack called a neshama. And therefore we see that the soul gives power to the body. And that is the intellect. As we say, Chokhmah techaye et ba'aleha. That wisdom gives life to its possessor. Halavai, we should all just taste that relationship, and we'll see how a miracle it is to be part of God's creation, to be integrated with the forces, and to be blessed with free choice, and to be able to use that free choice. Use the free choice to bring God into the world. By every good deed, we do that. God bless you all. We'll see you again.